Dragonfolk, as we are slowly approaching the actual spoiler season of Outsiders for Flesh and Blood on March 4th, it seems that we're getting a little sprinkle of some goodness before the actual spoiler season. Let's check out a couple cards that were spoiled this week and talk about how they may affect the meta going into the future. Welcome on in, Dragonfolk. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I know I am. My name is Ashen Wings, and you are all here in the lair with me. I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about some spoilers that were taken care of over the last couple of days here, and even talk about an errata to certain cards to hopefully give them more of an idea of how they're played. So, let's go ahead and just know, right, that spoiler season for Outsiders is on March 4th. March 4th is the spoiler date, right, where everybody's going to start releasing their stuff. But we did have a spoiler earlier this week from Team Covenant, one of the many professional esports teams and people that cover a ton of TCGs all over. They have gone over and done a spoiler card for Flesh and Blood for Outsiders. Now, the reason they did this is because Team Covenant actually has a promo version of this card that they're going to be giving out with their boxes when you buy a certain amount of boxes, or you get a promo with your box if you buy from Team Covenant. So go ahead and check out the Team Covenant website for anything there in regards to that. But let's talk about the card itself, right? The first card that was spoiled for our Outsiders here this week had been Peace of Mind. Peace of Mind is a very, very, I don't know, it's another defensive card, and a lot of people are wondering whether or not it was necessary to put in here, but let's go over the card itself. It is a 2-cost rainbow pitch, so it comes in red, yellow, and blue. It costs 2, and it reads, the next time you would be dealt physical damage this turn, prevent 4 of it, and then create a ponder token. So, obviously, there are some little things about this card that some people feel are not really viable, right? First and foremost, you have it only being able to block physical damage. So, it does not block arcane like Oasis Respite does, and it's more expensive than Oasis Respite by 1 resource. So, you are going to have to dedicate a yellow or a blue in order for you to play this card. Now, again, we run into a situation where there's got to be that source of value, right? And you look at something like this, and I'm sure a lot of people think the first thing they think of is, I'm going to put this in my Fatigue Olden build. Because this is just another instant speed card, mind you. I don't know if I told you that it was instant. This is an instant that you can cast to prevent the next 4 physical damage. But I think the more important part, and it really is an odd determination of the actual value of the card, is that you get a ponder token. Now, of course, ponder tokens have been around for a little while now, but what a ponder token does is at the end of your turn, draw a card. So, of course, how the step works is you move to end phase, then the ponder token is destroyed. You then put your arsenal, or you then put your pitch zone underneath your deck. And then you would draw you draw a card off of Ponder more specifically, but then you'd be able to take that set and put it on the bottom, and you'd essentially have a free card in hand. Now, of course, this means that if you really wanted to, you could kind of go off and just attack your opponent with everything you have on your turn, and then still get a free card in Arsenal if you happen to have the resources for it. But it's definitely not as valuable because a lot of people don't seem to be wanting to play this with things like Fyendal Spring Tunic. You know, Fyendal Spring Tunic will only get you 1 resource, whereas this costs 2. So spending that additional resource for something like this, it'd have to be a pretty dire situation. But what you can see from this is that with a blue pitch, the chances of you blocking a good amount of damage are pretty good. You could easily block with a card from hand, pitch, a blue to play this at instant speed. It gets over things like CNC, which you can't play defense reactions to. This will block 4 damage from the CNC. And more specifically, it'll block CNC and then also pummel if you happen to have enough things to defend, right? Let's say you defend with 4, right? And then you block with this, and then you pitch a blue, you block with this, and then you block with another Oasis Respite, right? The Oasis Respite only costs 1. Peace of Mind costs 2. So 1 blue pays for 2 instants that block 8 damage, and you possibly gain a life from Oasis Respite, and you gain a Ponder token, which means you get to draw a card. Another thing, of course, in Oldhim is the fact that you can play this to block out 4 physical damage, which in most cases you have physical damage. And then you can Crown of Seeds on top of that too, essentially filtering your arsenal to get you a new card, and then another Ponder token at the end to then get another card at the end of your turn, essentially giving you what could be a 6-card hand if you really wanted to not take anything, right? Or if you wanted to take everything that comes at you. But it's very situational. And I don't think it's really like an overpowered card. I mean, it's a common, right? Like I think we're all aware of the fact like this is not something that is going to be like the bee's knees, it's not some majestic. But do I think it sees play in fatigue decks? Definitely, for sure. Being able to block 4 physical damage, most of the decks do physical damage. I mean, you can side these out if you're not playing against if you're playing against a Kano, or maybe you're playing against, even if you're playing against Icelander, this wouldn't be too terrible because you pitch a blue, you got 1 float, and now you can block out a Wounding Bolt, There's something there. But I think it's just another buff card. I mean, I don't think it's going to see a whole ton of play. I don't know whether or not Oldhim's would switch this out for something that they're already running in their deck, because it just blocks 4 physical. So they have plenty of other cards that block 4 physical, including all of the defense reactions and Oasis Respite, and anything that gains them life is essentially in a way blocking, theoretically. So there's a lot that goes on in a fatigue deck. I just don't think this will be the move. What I do understand, though, is that the reason it blocks physical is because all 6 heroes in this set that are coming out in, and not even 6, there's Azalea, Katsu, Benji, Uzuri, Arachne, Riptide, and somebody else, right? Nope, I think that's it. I think there's only those 7. All 7 of these heroes are looking to do physical damage. So that is uncertain why this is in here. I'm sure it is here for the draft purpose, for the limited purpose. But of course, if it finds its way into constructed, that is one thing. Now, speaking of the heroes that are coming in Outsiders, we have a very interesting update to traps. Now, I know traps have been kind of a thing that everybody's put to the wayside, and they've gone, oh, whatever. This traps suck, right? Obviously, they can only play them from Arsenal, and they block for 4 usually, but like the effects are never really as good, and it's not like a game changer of a mechanic, so it's not really that great. Nobody really enjoys that. Traps are essentially a defense reaction with more offensive effects, as opposed to something like Sink Below or Fate Foreseen or Unmovable, right? What we have here is an errata for trap cards. What they've done is they've essentially taken the 3 traps from Crucible of War, and they took away the text reminder of what a trap is, essentially, or like how this all works. Because these traps can only be played from Arsenal, but that is not going to be the case moving forward. The traps still play from Arsenal, and the 3 traps, the Pitfall, Rock Slide, and Tripwire, they all obviously are still available to be played. And an article came out today talking about exactly that. In this article, James White goes over the design of traps and how they believed it was a fun little idea, but it's just not functionally playable, right? If traps have to be played from the arsenal, then every trap to come out from this point forward is one that you're going to have to put into the arsenal. Well, that is why they've now made this change. From this point forward, traps can be just a type of card, much like arrows are a type of card for rangers. You have traps. It's just a keyword to identify what the card is. So, for instance, if there's ever a card that says, if a trap was played during this turn, do X thing, traps are now just an identifier. So that means that while these 3 traps that came out in Crucible of War are, of course, still played the way they are printed, where you have to play them from Arsenal, the new traps and traps going forward may not be like that at all. And we see that with a new trap that was just introduced in the same article as a specialization for Riptide, which is mind-blowing to me. Let me go ahead and put this on the screen here for you so you guys can check this out. I'll go ahead and read it to you. This is a Ranger Defense Reaction trap that costs 0 and pitches for 3. It's a blue majestic specialization for Riptide. It's a legendary specialization. You can only have one of it in your deck. It blocks for 3. So it already does all the things everybody wants. It's a blue that blocks for 3 that costs 0 to play. So it's not at the same rate of something like Sink Below or Fate Foreseen, but the reason being is because of its effect, which says, when this defends an attack with Go Again, the attacking hero discards their hand, then draws that many cards -1. You can take your opponent's hand and completely throw it away and have them draw new cards -1. So let's say somebody's coming in with a Go Again attack, right? They come in with a leg tap that they have to pitch for, right? They come in with a leg tap, they pitch, and then you block the leg tap with this specialization. The opponent, with only what I imagine to be 2 cards in hand, now have to discard both of those cards to the graveyard and then draw 1 card, completely shutting down ninja shenanigans. Now, of course, this comes at a cost with the fact that you can only play 1 of them in your deck. I'm not too sure whether or not the Go Again in this situation is specifically for things with native Go Again, like the card has to have Go Again on it, or if you are giving something Go Again. And as long as that card has Go Again, you can block it and shove out an entire hand. Because if you can do the latter, you're shutting down Briar turns. You're shutting down huge Dromai turns. You're shutting down huge, and granted, you're only shutting down huge Dromai turns if they're playing Redline, because the attacking hero is the one that gets hit for this. So if Dromai attacks with a dragon, and you play this to defend the dragon, Dromai does not get affected by the ability, because the dragon is the one that it's attacking, not Dromai. So even still, though, you can utilize this in any way possible. I mean, most people start off their turns by playing an action card that has Go Again, unless you're playing like Guardian, right? And think about it even in the Guardian situation. If somebody's going to Zealous Belting you for 5, you can block with this card, block 2 of that damage, and then rip their whole hand from them. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Now, there's only 1. You're only allowed to have 1, but this makes me wonder what kind of other traps are available. Not to mention the fact that with the errata, you see this trap can be played from your hand. You don't need to have this trap in your arsenal in order to play it. So this completely changes it. This just makes trap decks defense reaction decks, as opposed to, it's almost the complete opposite of a warrior, which uses the attack reactions to kind of bluff your opponent into being able to scoot a little bit of extra damage out. This is a very defensive, scary thing where the ranger is going to be able to just set up defense reactions and you don't know which one you're going to get into, right? So very, very powerful. I mean, I'm curious to see how much work this card gets put in, and especially how many people start running things like a defensive ranger package. No longer a fatigue ranger Lexi where you got to slam out a whole bunch of stuff. You're probably playing Riptide, in which you may be super hyper defensive, and being able to strip your opponent's entire hand. That's huge fatigue. So I'm curious to see what the other traps are going to look like. Not to mention that we do also have a new bow that was introduced for outsiders. They had shown off the March Armory kit for Flesh and Blood. And let me tell you, it's pretty spicy. In this Armory kit, there is a cold foil version of Barbed Castaway, which is a new bow for Rangers. Now, I'm not sure whether or not it's like the bee's knees as far as bows go, because I'm still pretty new to Ranger. But what it says is a once per turn instant, you can pay a resource to put a arrow card from your hand face up into your arsenal. Then what you can do is you can also, a once per turn instant, take a face down card from your arsenal and flip it face up for one resource and put an aim counter on it. So I know we had aim counters kind of become more of a case with Sandscour Greatbow. So this one costs significantly less, I believe. The aim counter on Sandscour Greatbow, the arrow has to come from your deck and then put into your arsenal, and then it gets the aim counter. So this is essentially a way to, for one resource, give any of your arrows aim counters that you may have face down. So we may be seeing aim counter mechanics become more and more prevalent. I know you didn't see too many aim counters go on during these last ones, and even with Sandscour Greatbow coming out, I don't think too many people are running that build even in Azalea, and certainly not in Lexi. So I'm very curious to see what Riptide's whole concept is. If these aim counters probably aren't going on defense reactions or traps, right? Which means that we probably have some new arrows with some new aim counter abilities. Obviously, we have Hemorrhage Boar, which came out in Dynasty. There's a lot of aim counter arrows and attacks that came out in Dynasty. So I think we're going to see a shift in Ranger mechanic to go from a, Azalea's got the one big dominate attack, or even sometimes two big dominate attacks with a bunch of effects of on-hit arrows. Lexi has a bunch of her different spread out abilities, being able to switch between ice and lightning effects, giving frostbites, giving things go again. And then Riptide is looking to put aim counters on his arrows, as well as set up defense reactions to essentially destroy their opponents and harm them for even thinking about attacking Riptide in the first place. So there's a lot of very, very cool things with just these 3 promos alone. And I'm very excited to see that they are, in fact, changing traps. I was wondering whether or not they were going to do something like this because, well, traps just were not going to work if they stuck in the arsenal and that was the only way to play them. And James White has said now that he wants these cards to be viable. He wants people to be running the traps from Crucible of War because, he made them specifically for these purposes, right? But now they're probably going to be one, if not only the few traps to be played and to have to be played from Arsenal. But now not all traps are going to be forced into those requirements, as we see with the new trap that was just introduced earlier in this video. So let me know what you guys think. I mean, there's so many cool things and so many cool ways that we can go about talking about these things. I'm so incredibly excited to see what kind of shenanigans and traps can get into, because I like playing, it's going to sound a little weird, I like playing mind games with my opponents, especially when it comes to something like this. Having them come in to attack me and never knowing what trap they're going to be up against is pretty awesome. It means that your opponent essentially has to pivot their strategy. You know, if you're going to come in for a super big Art of War attack and I just block it with a collapsible a collapse trap and it ruins your whole hand and gets everything out of your hand, you can't play any of your cards at instant speed unless it's like a, sigil or whatever that may be the case. So, just to upset entire three of a kind turns, Art of War turns, Rain Razor turn. I mean, like, really, you're able to kind of upset the entire concept with just one card. And that's huge. It's going to really shut down the overextension of aggro decks with that new trap. And I'm just blown away. I'm very, very excited to see how this goes. So, again, let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. And while you're down there, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have not already. I like to make these videos and I talk about some spoilers as we go on. I want to make sure I credit all the people who spoiled those cards. So feel free to check out all the other spoilers that exist as the days go on. Like I said, March 4th is when the actual spoiler season starts. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And I'll make sure to report on any spoilers that may be spoiled before then. But we're coming up pretty close to the date, so hopefully it's much sooner than later. So thank you all so much for watching again. I do truly appreciate your support. And I will see you all very soon. Nerd out.